We're currently in a moment. It's February 2025. So we're 2 years now after the real public dissemination of ChatGPT. And we're really at a moment where we all need to individually get really clear on our own relationship to the various kinds of artificial intelligences. Now, there's about 8 or 9 broad classes of types of AI. And the one we're most familiar with, that's getting the most attention, of course, is just one of them, and it's the one based on the large language models. So ChatGPT and similar kinds of engines like Gemini, Claude, and DeepSeek. Now, I've talked about the intelligence side of this in another video, so I'll link that at the top here. But today I want to talk about more about the artificial aspects of what's happening here. Because the roots of the artificial intelligence are really based in automation and different processes of automation. So the automation of memory, and you're adding some type of perceptual or linguistic inputs and an ability to deliver outputs, importantly based on various predictive types of calculations. So we're not just dealing with like a faster, larger computer, as it were, but it's really the element of the predictive calculations that's really making the difference in crossing over from just like a super fast, powerful computer into something that we would call some type of artificial intelligence. And again, what we're really talking about here usually it's some type of chatbot based on a large language model. And what we're talking about when we do that really is the automation of intelligence, or the automation of cognition, or the automation of your decision-making processes. Now, if you are using ChatGPT, for example, to feed in your resume, and then you want it to give you like a summary of like your skills and your life experience so that you can use that in a job interview, for example, what that is an outsourcing of your own psychic labor. Now, it's important to know that in many popular and business kinds of contexts, this is the goal. This is the laudable kind of value. Like, yeah, I want to outsource my psychic labor. But from a psychological and spiritual point of view, what's really happening is, if this is repeated over time and with like more intimate questions, more existentially consequential questions, this does contribute de facto to your own psychic alienation. For example, consulting the chatbots on really important consequential questions like, what should I be doing with my life? Should I continue to invest in such and such a relationship? Now, this is basically the crux of the argument that well-known author Deepak Chopra has put forward in a recent book called Digital Dharma, which I have reviewed on this channel. So I'll link that up here and in one of the screens at the end of the video. Basically, he has championed the idea of turning to ChatGPT for your deepest problems as probably better than therapy, better than turning to a human for counseling, or as a spiritual teacher. And really just using a lot of the same reductive kinds of reasons for this, appealing to efficiency, or that you don't have to pay, or that, you don't have to worry about feelings, and you can just ask ChatGPT over and over and over again, as many times as you want, until you're basically satisfied with the answers you get. Does this sound familiar? Asking questions like, how do I improve my intuition? Or can you tell me how I should figure out what I should do next with my life? So can you just imagine for a moment asking ChatGPT or Gemini, for example, to questions about the phenomenology of intuition? This really got me into thinking more deeply about the ways in which this is actually similar or different to tools we might already use, like a dictionary or Google or Wikipedia. So I'll give you a second here. Can you guess what the difference is? Or do you think there actually is no difference? Just like take a moment, because I'll just say the answer here. Like, there are at least two really important qualitative differences in kind between the types of tools that we are now talking about. But I wanted to be actually really generous with his arguments, and I wanted to just really consider, okay, well, how is this maybe different at all from, for example, taking questions like about your life purpose or about loved ones and consulting the tarot, for example. Structurally, it's a very similar process of divination. You're talking with, you're using like this non-human tool to consult on like the most deep and intimate, like spiritual questions. And similar to just asking ChatGPT for more clarification over and over, we would do this with tarot as well. Like maybe we do another reading, another spread, we consult another reader until we're really satisfied with the answer we've got. So, how is this different? So, there's a lot of surface similarities, but like I said, there are at least two fundamental qualitative differences. So, see if you can already think about what these are and put that in the comments and let me know. Let's just talk about the similarities. Obviously, okay, both, and this is actually quite interesting, both are drawing upon millennia of human knowledge, historical forms of human knowledge, and they're doing this in different ways. So the tarot is really a visual lexicon, and that's why you can train in it. You need to train in it to some degree to properly read it, to deeply interpret it. It's fusing many different mystical and symbological traditions. As we know, of course, you know how it works with the large language models. This is why someone wanted to buy like the largest publishing company in the world to basically override copyright that had been copyright contracts so that it could feed it into its AI. Also, another similarity here, both of these can give you advice on the basis of these cumulative histories of knowledge, these different traditions. And importantly, both can mislead you, or you can be deceived with using each of these tools. But in the case of the tarot already, there's a huge difference because any deception or, leading yourself to like misguiding yourself, basically, it just happens. You're responsible for it, really. Like it's not even genuine deception, which would come from the outside, but you're really ultimately still responsible for the conclusions that you make. Now, you might also say, oh, well, someone still is in the case of ChatGPT. Yes and no. No, there's a lot of cases where that would never be the case. With children, for example, and this is already segueing into two of the main fundamental differences, really, between these types of tools. Unlike the tarot, GPT is really a very amplified form of externalization, which is, as I've said, it's an automation of cognition, it's an automation of intelligence and decision making. The tarot is not like this at all. The tarot still requires you to use your own inner psychic resources for interpretation and for drawing your own conclusions and for acting on those conclusions. So tarot is really, it's still keeping you in touch with your own psychic history, and even arguably it's still keeping you in touch with your own internal time stream, and it's cultivating that relationship in a way that I don't think we could ever say that about ChatGPT. So I see this as being really similar to making a comparison with like organic foods and like the synthetic ingredients that are kind of like sneakily slid into a lot of ultra processed foods. So you can have real vitamin C because you have an organic lemon, or you can have a synthetic simulacra of citric acid, which is just used as a preservative because the rest of the food isn't actually really food. Like it's a lot of other mishmash of other types of substances. The other obvious difference here between tarot and ChatGPT, because this is absolutely not a glib comparison, I think it's very worthwhile to do this type of comparison given the nature of what that book and this author has been suggesting. The stakes are pretty high, actually. So the other obvious difference is the tarot is not linked up with like digital networks of control and tracking and programming in ways that are very obvious with ChatGPT. Like if you actually pay attention and you start digging into it and you just like, you know how to put two and two together, it's pretty clear. And so the tarot does not expose anyone to those types of risks. At the risk of sounding super obvious here, we have to point out the obvious when we're in these new types of contexts. This is not just another type of divination tool. It's not just another type of, it's not the same thing as having like a private therapy session with another human. I'm not here to like make a judgment on like individual use cases of this technology. Obviously, there are many other types and types of uses. I'm just singling out like this one very specific avenue that has been suggested in this book because of the stakes and the consequences that it has. So if you work in the mental health professions, I think you will already be on board with this. I'm sure you can understand. Maybe it's not black and white. There are many other types of examples or aspects that I am not mentioning here right away, but I do think it's highly important, and we are really overlooking at this point still how much we should be listening to our intuitions, our natural intuitions about, what's really at stake here with the automation of psychic processes, because that's what's happening. So let me know what you guys think in the comments, and if you've read this book, and I will also link the book review I did, the live, and yeah, I'd love to hear from you.